Nancy Drew is a cultural phenomenon, one that has continued to be recognizable for decades. She's a mystery-solving teen who became an inspiration for kids everywhere. Nancy Drew became a character we could look up to, wanting to be smart, independent, and determined like her. Nancy made us feel like we could do anything. In addition, Nancy Drew's introduction led to other popular mysteries targeted towards children, like Cam Jensen, A to Z Mysteries, and more, changing youth literature forever. The books were published in 1930 under the pseudonym Carolyn Keene. The first books were written by Mildred Benson, who grew up in Iowa and had been hired as a ghostwriter. Mildred wrote 23 of the first 30 Nancy Drew novels. However, Mildred was not confirmed as the original writer until the 1990s. Today, there are over 600 books, including spin-off series like the Nancy Drew Files and Nancy Drew Girl Detective, and more than 30 video games. Nancy Drew has cemented herself as one of the most recognizable heroines in children's literature. Young girls were limited in their depiction in books, and I was curious to look into every Nancy Drew adaptation. I had only been familiar with 3 Nancy Drew adaptations before researching for this video, and I was curious to examine all of them and the direction each had taken. All of Nancy Drew's adaptations have a different style, so let's take a look at the 7 different depictions of the character. Before watching any of the adaptations, I made it a goal to read some Nancy Drew books to familiarize myself with the character and the world. I will rank the adaptations near the end of the video.
What do you suppose people will think when they ask, who's your friend, and I say the Iceman? Could have at least gotten a job delivering flowers or something.
Flowers?
The book series hadn't been out for 10 years, and the first adaptation released with Bonita Greenville playing Nancy Drew. These Nancy Drew films were classified as a B film, which was a shorter film shown before the main film when going to movie theaters. Between 1938 to 1939, 4 B films about Nancy Drew were released: Nancy Drew Detective, Nancy Drew Reporter, Nancy Drew Troubleshooter, and Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase. The response to these movies were mixed. Harriet Adams sold all the rights to Warner Brothers and later on said she regretted that decision. Mildred Benson, one of the ghostwriters for the series, did acknowledge that she liked the movies but were different than what she wrote. Bonita is the youngest Nancy Drew, playing her at 15/16 years old. However, a big issue with this adaptation was that it's probably one, if not the least accurate portrayal of the character Nancy Drew. This Nancy Drew seemed more ditzy than her book counterpart. There was this scene in The Hidden Staircase where she opens the door to a stranger and tells him that it's the Drew house, without asking who he was first. Her first instinct after he enters her house is to announce that she's calling the police.
They aren't here.
Come on, where are they?
I said they weren't here.
Yeah? Well, I'll just look around.
You can't come in here like this. I'll call the police.
Listen, little girl. I'm trying to be nice. No more tricks. Get in there.
Nancy Drew is a character that was able to reject typical gender roles as she's able to think on her feet and be independent. But this adaptation does a poor job of capturing the essence of Nancy Drew. In Nancy Drew Reporter, she freaks out over a whistle bomb. Like, what universe would Nancy do this and not know what a whistle bomb was? She would have been smart enough to realize that it isn't an actual bomb. Ted had to be the one to tell her. In Nancy Drew Detective, the mystery involves an old woman getting kidnapped, and Nancy tries to find her, and the kidnappers get to her before she can escape and have a gun. Near the end of the movie, she takes a gun and begins to shoot with her eyes closed. How does this make sense, to just shoot a gun wherever out of fear? Then she gets applauded for her behavior when she's found, and she faints at the sight of the gun. My final annoyance with this adaptation was a similar dramatic ending happening in Nancy Drew Troubleshooter, which follows a story about how a close friend is accused of murder. Nancy decides to prove his innocence, and she does. Basically, the bad guys force Ted and Nancy into a plane, and Ted and Nancy are freaking out while the plane is in the air, as the pilot jumps out with a parachute. Airplanes are relatively new tech, but Nancy freaking out and not even attempting to figure out how to steer the plane and leaving it to Ted was out of character for her. Then, when the plane lands, Nancy faints at the idea of being in the plane, which I can only imagine was for comedic relief. Shifting away from the criticism towards how Nancy Drew was portrayed, the mystery seemed to rely more on murder, which is fine, but I wish there was more variety with the cases. It felt like all the movies were similar, making them all run together in my brain. However, The movies were enjoyable to watch because of how entertaining Bonita is on screen. A dumb change that I can't not mention was Ned being changed to Ted. Ted isn't like his book counterpart, solely making him a sidekick to Nancy, appearing awkward at times.
No, give me your belt.
Nancy, if I give you my belt, I'll be wearing my pants like a pair of spats.
Oh, you can hold him up, can't you?
You and your idea.
One.
If you keep butting in on the police like this, we're going to spend the rest of our vacation in jail. You know that, don't you?
Quarter. 4 1/4 lengths. Remember that, will you?
Well, maybe I'm dumb, Nancy, but I'm still in the dark.
Where's that shell?
So, this adaptation isn't the most loyal to Nancy Drew as a character, but Bonita is a delight to watch and brings life to Nancy Drew.
5. 5's got just a guy on it.
4's just got a girl on it.
Pretty girls are more interesting than guys.
Only to chauvinists.
A little background, the Hardy Boys / Nancy Drew Mysteries was a television series from 1977 to 79 on ABC that stars Pamela Sue Martin as Nancy Drew. The first season had 14 episodes that alternated between solo episodes with the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. The second season had more crossovers and saw the departure of Pamela Sue Martin because of the show's change in direction. Janet Louise Jackson came in to finish the season, and the Nancy Drew character was dropped completely from the show in season 3. As a result of Pamela Sue Martin being in her mid-20s, the characters were aged up, which I do think changes the adaptation quite a bit. Some highlights from season 1 was I really liked the Diamond Triangle episode that focused on Nancy solving a mystery of missing cars and finding out people are stealing cars and trying to reap the benefits. In general, all the episodes this season are so interesting, like the Whispering Walls episode being a counterfeit scheme. The Mystery of Fallen Angels had such a fun premise with having a carnival be the cover-up for stealing and there being 2 mysteries in one. First, she finds out the people running the carnival are stealing, using the carnival as a front, and stealing appliances from a rich couple. Then, jewels are stolen and the couple thinks the carnival thieves stole that as well. However, the couple lied because they were broke and sold the jewels a while ago and wanted to get insurance money if claimed they were stolen. In addition, probably my favorite episode is the Golden Kicker. A kicker for the football team gets blackmailed to throw the big game because some people set him up for killing a girl, and Nancy figures out that people are betting on the game and wanted the kicker's team to lose so they could win money. One thing I didn't like was the show felt a little long at 48 to 49 minutes. I think it could have still worked if it was shortened by 5 to 10 minutes because some episodes really drowned on with a lot of dialogue. Season 2 is when the show made drastic changes and started to go downhill. The season starts with the crossovers, which became my least favorite and made me realize that I liked the Nancy solo episodes a lot more. The crossovers seemed more centered on the Hardy Boys, and Nancy Drew was even listed as a special guest star. As a result, the screen time didn't feel equal and made it seem like the Hardy Boys were always trying to save Nancy, which got annoying that they diminished her character in the crossover. The 3 solo episodes for Nancy Drew this season overall weren't the best. I really liked the tennis episode, Nancy Drew's Love Match, as it followed a girl Nancy knew in high school at this big tennis tournament and she's a kleptomaniac. She gets accused of stealing expensive jewelry while playing and Nancy has to clear her name. However, other than that one, the other 2 just paled in comparison to season 1. In addition, they recasted George in the second season, which I can't tell you if I liked season 1 version better because neither seemed accurate to their book counterpart, as it felt like the writers combined the characteristics of Bess and George. Bess's arrival in season 2 was short-lived as she really didn't get a chance to shine, which was a tad upsetting. Furthermore, there was 2 Neds. Season 1 Ned was goofy, but he did have his heroic moments. There was a new Ned introduced in season 2, which I felt he was more book accurate. Maybe. I don't know, this man only appeared in 1 episode. I feel it's important to mention that this adaptation seems to favor Frank and Nancy being in a relationship more than Nancy and Ned. After the solo episodes, Pamela Sue Martin quit, and we got Janet Louise Jackson. I thought she was fine. She never had a solo episode and was in 4 crossover episodes with the Hardy Boys. She really didn't get a lot of material, and I think she did what she could with what was given, especially because in the Arson and Old Lace episode, she was kidnapped for the majority of it, and the Hardy Boys had to come and save her. Nancy Drew as a character was fun to watch, and Pamela Sue Martin did the character justice. However, it's important to consider that aging her up takes away some of the antics that Nancy did in the books and did alter the tone of the television series, since she was in her mid-20s and more of an adult than a meddling teenager.
Okay, let's not cause a scene. Let's shoot some pool. Pool? I don't shoot pool. Who shoots pool anymore?
This adaptation stars Tracy Ryan as Nancy Drew, as she's 21 years old and a criminology student who moves to New York City and lives life with her best friends, Bess and George. Ned appears occasionally as he does charity missions in Africa. This adaptation in particular was based on the Nancy Drew Files, which was a spin-off of the original Nancy Drew books. The big takeaway from the Nancy Drew Files was they focused more on relationship drama between Nancy and Ned. This show only had 13 episodes before its cancellation. The writing in these episodes aren't good. I don't know what's happening half the time. The best part of Nancy Drew is solving the mystery along with Nancy and trying to guess the ending. But when the mystery progresses slowly, the journey to solving the mystery can lose the viewer very quickly. For example, one episode had a mystery take place in an asylum, and it lost me from the beginning. These concepts could have been decent if the writers were capable of pacing. It's either paced too fast or too slow, which is rather confusing for a 20-minute television show. The Death About Billy Farrell episode with them seeing his ghost and finding out what happened to Billy was one of the stronger episodes of the season. I was intrigued. The plot ends with them finding out Billy Farrell had a brother and he was the one that died, and Billy Farrell wanted to live this normal life out of the spotlight. Randomly, there was 4 episodes in Paris. I didn't hate the Paris episodes, but I was so lost on how they even ended up there. The show takes place supposedly in New York City, which is a stretch since the mysteries don't give off this vibe, and the writers don't utilize the location well at all. Nancy's characterization kind of bothers me, which goes back to the poor writing. Apparently she's a criminology student, but when is she actually studying? In the books, she isn't even going to college, and I liked that. What I don't understand is how they established her being a criminology student and it was barely utilized. There at least could have been more application of what she's learning. Other than that, I thought she was fine. Tracy does a good job with what was written, but it was detrimental to Nancy's character when the mysteries she was solving were just not that interesting. George and Bess are decent in this adaptation, so is Ned. I liked how they were a part of some of the mysteries and helped her solve them in the show. I wish Ned was in it a little bit more just because I like him, but it makes sense he was recurring. There was no Carson Drew in this, which oddly enough was the only adaptation with such a small amount of Nancy's dad. In addition, there was 2 crossover episodes with the Hardy Boys television series that also got canceled, and it was meh. Nancy didn't feel as much like a sidekick in the crossover episodes, but the writing and dialogue killed it for me. Overall, this adaptation is weak in terms of its mysteries, and my enjoyment was very low, but the characters were somewhat accurate to their book counterparts.
Sounds like coercion.
Exactly. Okay if you're pro, not okay if you're a student. So I continue with the snooping.
As you are wont to do.
ABC tried again with another Nancy Drew adaptation, and this film starred Maggie Lawson as Nancy Drew. This seemed inspired by the Nancy Drew Files, like the 1995 television series. Nancy Drew's in college with her best friends, Bess and George. Bess wanted to rush a sorority, and the chapter's president's boyfriend gets in a coma. He's a star football player, and Nancy tries to discover if the school could have been behind what happened. So, before I get into it, this movie was supposed to be the pilot for a Nancy Drew television series, so this was an introduction to the characters and the environment. As we are evaluating Nancy Drew, Maggie Lawson is definitely one of the stronger Nancy Drew depictions. I think the script for this movie was decent, and Nancy came off as clever and independent, which not every adaptation portrayed her this way, falling into just telling us how smart and independent she is.
Strawberry daiquiri just for you.
Isn't it a little late for you guys?
Oh, gosh, I know, but I'm on an emergency call. And anyways, I found that even in the wee hours, people still need candy strawberry. I mean, especially neurology with all those tubes and thermometers coming out of their heads.
Hold on a sec, William. Hold on. Honey, I'm on
It's a continual wonder to me what a single sour apple jelly bean could do for a subdural hematoma. You know, I've been candy striping since I was in the 4th grade, and I don't recall you. What's your name?
I gotta finish this call in private. William, hold on a second.
Maggie was so likable as Nancy, and I couldn't help but enjoy seeing her throughout the movie. Ned goes to college far away, and that was book accurate, so I was okay with the Ned cameo because he wasn't always in the books and just popped up. However, the writers that decided it was a good idea to set up a love triangle with that detective are going to the bad place. Like, Nancy is 18, a freshman in college, and this detective is in his mid-20s. A rather big con is there wasn't really a mystery in this because the sorority girl's BF had a stroke and it was just Nancy proving the school had put pressure on him to take Pheterine. So it's hard to praise this adaptation that much if there wasn't really a mystery in it. It felt more like we were watching for the characters instead of for the mystery. I will admit I was hesitant about Nancy going to college, and this adaptation left me indifferent to the plotline. Nancy is a journalism student, which kind of worked in this movie, but if this had been picked up for a television show, I don't know if it would have worked over several episodes. Let me explain why. It messes up the intention of her solving mysteries. Is she solving it for the person or for the story? Does she want recognition for the mysteries she's solving? When she's talking about the mystery she's solving, she mentions writing about it in the paper, and even the mystery at this college, she ends up writing a story about it and gaining attention. Which is great. We love a girl that has ambition, but it does create conflict if she solves mysteries to write a story about it later. Personally, I wish she would have been a different major, like be a part of the business school or even STEM, just to show how interested in multiple activities and subjects she is. The introduction of Teeny, their fourth roommate, felt unnecessary, and I wish I was able to see more of Hank as well as George and Bess, because I liked their friendship with Nancy so much, and the little we did see was great. Bess and George were pretty accurate to their book counterparts, and I liked that a lot. Overall, Nancy was pretty good, but falls flat on having a plot with an actual mystery.
What do you think? I think the ability to sleuth is an attractive quality in a woman.
This film was definitely targeted towards a younger audience as Nancy Drew moves from River Heights to California when her dad gets a job there temporarily. She finds a house with a mystery, despite her father's wishes to sleuth, and wants to figure out what happened to Dahlia Draycott. Another day, another adaptation where Ned is wimpy. They set up Ned to be the guy best friend who's been harboring a crush on Nancy for years. The movie ends with him confessing his feelings, and she admits to liking him too, but I just don't see how Book Ned would harbor feelings for a girl that long. That's another boy. Not Ned. Having Nancy in life-threatening situations with the bad guys trying to kill her is accurate. She's never minding her business, so it makes sense that bad people would come after her. The scene with the bomb in her car was super dramatic, but it still gave the mystery the edge it needed. The mystery was pretty good, especially because I liked the natural progression of piecing together clues. Nancy went through and watched movies leading up to her death, finding out that Dahlia was pregnant and had a child. She realized where Dahlia's will was by watching one of her movies, which led to her eventually solving the case. The villain was pretty predictable as he was Dahlia's manager and didn't want to lose money when she wanted to quit the industry. Portraying Nancy as some sort of loser was weird, especially having the side plot with her not fitting in and not having any friends. Then, she throws this big party that everyone comes to, because that's how you become cool. Throw the party of the year. Nancy Drew gives off strong Mary Sue vibes in this, with displaying her be good at math, athletics, woodshed, and acting. In the books, she was good at a lot of things, but it didn't feel as shoved in our faces like the movie did. Why is Nancy Drew so old-fashioned in this adaptation? I get the book series is old, but it's very confusing and just does not make a lot of sense to have her be this quirky girl that stands out because of her old-fashioned taste. Her personality revolves around her liking old things, which led to her being interested in an old case and wearing vintage-style clothing. Like, I guess it works for a cute movie targeted towards kids, but as an adaptation of Nancy Drew, this isn't as accurate as I would have liked. Why would the bad guys listen to Nancy about what the best way to kill her is? Like, you're the villains. You want to kill her. And that definitely made the ending with her being held at gunpoint come off as cheesy. Overall, Nancy wears a lot of plaid in this, but the mystery was pretty good.
Actually, I'm done with mysteries. You know, from now on, I just want to sit back, talk about boys, Instagram, do my nails.
What?
This adaptation drew inspiration from the book with the same title, and you would think the movie would be accurate to the book. Not really. This movie follows Nancy Drew moving to River Heights from Chicago, and Nancy struggles to fit in. She begins to help Flora when her house is being haunted and wants to figure out how someone is breaking in. A lot of my criticism for this adaptation is how Nancy Drew was written. First, we have Nancy Drew pranking someone for releasing an embarrassing video of Bess, which felt very juvenile. If Nancy found out someone was mean to her friend, I don't think she would embarrass the kid as severely as she did. She turned this kid's skin blue and committed a crime. In addition, what was the point of her mom's death being so recent? I feel like this drastically alters Nancy's motivations and explains why, when she sees wrong, she doesn't just get them in trouble with an authority figure, but exposes them. There's a significant impact on your life if you lose a parent at 3 years old than 15/16. Since I'm talking about Nancy as a character, I wasn't really a fan. I find it a bit of a cliche to want to make a character relatable by making them an outsider. I think they did this for her to be relatable to the average kid watching the movie. However, in reality, the structure in high school is not that clear-cut, where it's the popular kids against everyone else. Not everyone is defined by one hobby or interest, and what makes Nancy so relatable was she wasn't defined into a clique. We all saw a part of ourselves in her because she had various interests and hobbies like a lot of us. By changing Nancy Drew to be not like the other girls, then you're altering what makes Nancy Drew, Nancy Drew. There was no need for there to be an addition of a mean girl character, and having Nancy be mean to her because of who Helen was dating? I just don't like this narrative for her to be mean to another character. I'm indifferent about the characterization of George and Bess. However, I did like how they helped Nancy on the mystery. This was also the only Nancy Drew adaptation where Nancy didn't have a love interest. I do think the writers simplified the hidden staircase mystery, but it worked well. Nancy and Helen are able to save Flora and Carson Drew, and the villain began to hallucinate till the police came. This movie had the same charm as the books, and that made it great to watch. This movie is targeted at a younger audience, similar to Emma Roberts' adaptation, which is fair because it is a children's book series. However, it felt like the mystery was simplified a lot compared to what was in the book. I know there's a time restraint, so parts of the book had to be cut out, but it would have been nice to at least fully develop the antagonist. There was no Hannah character, and they added Nancy having an aunt. Honestly, I understand removing Hannah, as it isn't common to have a maid like it was in the 1930s. Still, I would rather there not have been an addition of an aunt to fill the absence of Hannah. To wrap up, Nancy Drew's character was frustrating and the mystery was decent.
Would make your bosses happy. Did the Hudsons send you here?
She's here for me, for support.
And I'm sure her employers are really hoping everybody pulls through.
Okay, Drew.
This show follows Nancy Drew at 18, who's taking a gap year after her mom died during her senior year of high school. She works at the local diner, the Bayside Claw, and has given up on solving mysteries. Tiffany Hudson, a citizen in her town, ends up dead, and Nancy and the other employees at the diner are suspects. Ned is called Nick in this adaptation, which I can only gather is because Ned is not of common of a name. However, what was the point of Ned being a convict? Especially because adults were spreading around his criminal record when he was a minor and it should be sealed. Although it was realistic when Nancy didn't treat him right because she wasn't the greatest girlfriend to him in the books as well. This show, in my opinion, would be better if there was one mystery per episode, not a big mystery overlooking the entire season. There's not 100+ Nancy Drew books for nothing. However, I will say The Mystery of Blackwood Lodge and The Mark of the Poisoner's Pearl were my favorite episodes because they did have a separate mystery in them that was pretty interesting. Nancy Drew's friends are different from their book counterparts, but the only one that might be similar is Bess. Bess's storyline about her being British, broke, and moving to America to claim a rich family was actually pretty interesting. This adaptation is very supernatural. There are ghosts just haunting people like it's normal. Multiple characters have near-death experiences where they interact with / seem to be dead but are lingering in between. That includes Nancy going to an alternate universe and George going to the spirit world while Ace is in a coma to make sure he's okay. In addition, George gets possessed by Tiffany's ghost. Haven't mentioned Carson Drew a lot because he does his job and minds his business, but this adaptation ruined him. He's a lawyer that works for rich families that are a part of corruption. Nancy has multiple conflicts with her dad, which could play into her unresolved feelings about her mom passing away. And spoiler alert, it did. She's angry with her dad keeping secrets like he isn't a lawyer and is not entitled to tell her everything. Also, it's way too easy for Nancy to get annoyed with someone and accuse them of murder. She finds one thing that can make them guilty and automatically assumes they killed Tiffany and acts rude towards them. She does this with her dad, Ace, Bess, and Nick. She snoops, gets caught, and somehow turns them into the villain. She bases her argument of them being guilty off one thing, which isn't very rational. For example, with Bess having the ring of Tiffany's, instead of snooping through her stuff, she should have confronted her and not invade her privacy at first chance. Nancy as a character is annoying, and I think this is the best adaptation to show off some of Nancy's flaws. She can only care about herself and not cherish the friends she has. She can be so determined that she forgets the world around her. Nancy has obvious flaws in this television series which are not as apparent in the other adaptations. Later on in the season, I got to the point where Owen died, which I didn't have any emotional feelings toward since he wasn't that big of a factor in the show. The big plot twist was Nancy figuring out who her parents are. Because of this, she's mad at her dad all over again because she was being nice to him when he was accused of murder, but oops, didn't tell her about her real parents because her birth mother didn't want anyone to know for Nancy's safety, and she's angry. To conclude, they Riverdaled this Nancy Drew adaptation. They took the characters and told their own story. One random continuity that I really liked was the appearance of Nancy's iconic blue car, which depending on the books you read, it was a roadster, a convertible, then specialized to a Mustang. Every adaptation in color makes sure to include Nancy with her blue car, and I think that deserves some praise. Now, on to the tricky part. This ranking is going to be hard, and I want to say that 2 through 6 are super close and could probably be switched around depending on the day. Number 7, 1995 television series. This shouldn't be a surprise. The writing of the show was detrimental, and by having mysteries that were bland, it really made it forgettable. Number 6, 2019 television series. I cannot rank this any higher for the sole reason that this is the loosest adaptation, as there are very few book-loyal things and the characters are not as similar as I would like to their book counterparts. This adaptation is fun to enjoy as a separate entity, but as a Nancy Drew adaptation, it has to be near the bottom. Number 5, 2019 film. This has an interesting mystery as it's from the books, but I just cannot forget about how I didn't like the portrayal of Nancy at all. I found the Not Like Other Girls to be particularly strong in this adaptation, making it frustrating. Number 4, 1938 to 1939 films. These movies were fun and humorous, but it felt like Nancy was ditzy and not as independent and smart. The reason it's average is because I think the charm that Bonita Greenville brings to Nancy Drew makes her likable despite its flaws. Number 3, 2007 film. This has my favorite mystery out of all the movies. I do think this mystery does a good job with establishing Nancy Drew as a character, even if she isn't as accurate as I would have liked. Number 2, 2002 film. This might be a surprise, but at the end of the day, there's a lot this movie did well. Even though this movie does not follow a traditional format of a mystery, it had one of the better Nancy Drews, and the writing made this movie redeemable in my eyes. Number 1, 1977 to 79 television series. This should come to no surprise. This is the most complete adaptation on this list, with having Nancy and the mysteries feel similar to the books. This adaptation is not perfect, but it's one that I felt had stronger positives than the others. Nancy Drew is one of the most prominent characters from the 20th century, and I do see more adaptations of her character in the future. None of these adaptations are perfect, so I'm interested to see how many more arise. Watching these adaptations gave me an appreciation to all the different interpretations and versions that are available, and how these books have continued to be popular. Let me know what your favorite Nancy Drew adaptation is, and I'll see you soon.